In the remote village of Dema, nestled among the rolling hills of Zimbabwe, were two sisters born under vastly different circumstances. Fadzai, the older sister, was born on a serene moonlit night. The village celebrated her arrival with songs and blessings, believing her birth under the calm, gentle light of the full moon to be a sign of great fortune. Fadzai grew up embodying the qualities of her birth. She was graceful, kind, and had a quiet strength. Her beauty was as radiant as the moon itself, and she quickly became the pride of her parents and the entire village. Dadirai, her younger sister, was born 2 years later during a fierce thunderstorm. The night she entered the world, lightning tore across the sky, and the earth shook with the fury of the storm. Her cries were as loud as the thunder, and the villagers took it as an omen. While her parents loved her dearly, they could not help but feel a sense of unease. Dadirai grew up with a fiery spirit to match the tempestuous night of her birth. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her ambition and intense drive that set her apart. Though the sisters were as close as children, the differences between them began to create a shift, with Dadirai always feeling overshadowed but by Fadzai's natural charm and grace. As the sisters grew older, so did the admiration and love from the villagers towards Fadzai. She became the embodiment of everything good in the village, kind, gentle, and wise beyond her years. She was often chosen to lead ceremonies, and the elders spoke of her with reverence, seeing her in the potential for greatness. Dadirai, on the other hand, though equally beautiful and intelligent, was often overlooked. Her fiery nature, once admired for its passion, began to be seen as arrogance. While Fadzai's star continued to rise, Dadirai felt increasingly marginalized. The villagers' favoritism did not go unnoticed by Dadirai. Each time she heard her sister praised, a dark seed of envy sprouted in her heart. She couldn't understand why, despite her own efforts, she could never match Fadzai in the eyes of others. This feeling of inadequacy festered, turning her love for her sister into something bitter and resentful. Dadirai began to withdraw, spending more time alone, her mind consumed with thoughts of how to step out of Fadzai's shadow and claim her own place in the world. She would often find herself staring into the night, the darkness reflecting the growing void in her heart. One fateful day, as the sisters approached womanhood, a mysterious figure arrived in Dema. She was an old woman, her back bent with age, but her eyes were sharp and piercing, holding a knowledge that unsettled those who met her gaze. She introduced herself as Gogo Makoni, a wanderer from distant lands, though she revealed little about her past. The villagers were wary of her, sensing something unnatural about her presence. They kept their distance, unsure whether to offer her hospitality or send her away. Dadirai, however, was intrigued by the stranger. She had heard whispers that Gogo Makoni possessed great power, the kind of power that could change a person's fate. One evening, when the village was quiet and the moon hung low in the sky, Dadirai approached the old woman. She poured out her heart, confessing her feelings of inadequacy and her growing hatred for her sister's endless praise. Gogo Makoni listened in silence, her eyes gleaming with strange light. When Dadirai finished, the old woman smiled a toothless grin and spoke in a voice that seemed to echo with the weight of the ages. She offered Dadirai a choice: continue living in Fadzai's shadow or take a path that would lead her to power, but at a cost. Desperate and blinded by her envy, Dadirai accepted, unaware of the dark forces she was about to unleash. Gogoma Koni did not waste time in revealing the first steps of the dark path Dadirai had chosen. She led Dadirai to a secluded spot deep in the forest, far from the eyes of the village. There, beneath an ancient baobab tree, the witch began her incantations. The air grew with an unnatural chill as Gogoma Koni chanted in a language Dadirai had never heard before. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with a bad energy, and Dadirai's heart raced with both fear and excitement. The witch presented Dadirai with a small, intricately carved charm, telling her that it would make her as beloved as Fadzai. But there was a catch. Dadirai would have to wear it close to her heart, and it would slowly bind her soul to the forces Gogoma Koni had summoned. Dadirai hesitated, but the thought of finally eclipsing her sister's radiance was too tempting. She took the charm and, with trembling hands, placed it around her neck. That night, as Dadirai slept with the charm close to her heart, she dreamt of herself standing in the center of the village, with everyone gazing at her in admiration. Fadzai was nowhere to be seen. When she awoke, she found that the charm had begun to seep into reality. Villagers who once barely acknowledged her presence now greeted her with warm smiles and compliments. Even the village elders, who had always favored Fadzai, seemed to take a new interest in her. Dadirai reveled in the attention, feeling the power of the charm working its magic. But deep down, a part of her knew that this newfound adoration came at a cost far greater than she could imagine. As days turned into weeks, Dadirai's influence in the village grew. The charm had done its work, and she was now the one who commanded the admiration and respect that had once been Fadzai's alone. But rather than feeling satisfied, Dadirai found herself wanting more. The charm had ignited a hunger within her, one that could not be sated by mere adoration. She didn't just want to be loved. She wanted to see Fadzai brought low, to see her sister suffer as she had. The envy that had once been a small seed had now blossomed into a full-blown monster, consuming her thoughts. Dadirai began to notice that, despite her growing popularity, Fadzai remained calm and unbothered. This infuriated Dadirai, who had hoped to see her sister broken by the shift in fortune. Instead, Fadzai continued to carry herself with the same grace and kindness, seemingly unaffected by the change in the villagers' affections. Dadirai could not stand it. How could Fadzai remain so composed, while everything she had ever known was being taken from her? Determined to shatter Fadzai's composure, Dadirai returned to Gogoma Koni once more. She demanded a stronger spell, something that would not only make her the most beloved, but would also bring about Fadzai's downfall. The old witch, who had been watching Dadirai's transformation with a mixture of amusement and caution, warned her of the dangers of the further dark magic. But Dadirai, now in the full grip of her jealousy, insisted. Gogoma Koni, seeing that Dadirai would not be swayed, agreed to help her once more, though she knew that the path Dadirai was on would lead to destruction. Gogoma Koni's next spell was far more sinister. She provided Dadirai with a necklace, similar to the charm she had been wearing, but this one was cursed with dark magic. The witch explained that the necklace would sap Fadzai's strength and would bring her bad fortune, isolating her from the love and support of the villagers. Dadirai, eager to see her sister's downfall, took the necklace without hesitation. She planned her next move carefully, pretending to reconcile with Fadzai. Dadirai approached her sister with tears in her eyes, apologizing for the distance that had grown between them. She claimed that she wanted to make amends and presented Fadzai with a cursed necklace as a symbol of their renewed bond. Fadzai, touched by the gesture, and unaware of the dark magic woven into the gift, accepted it gratefully. At first, nothing seemed to change. Fadzai continued with her daily routines, her grace and kindness unaltered. But soon, subtle misfortunes began to befall her. Her once thriving garden wilted, her animals fell ill, and the villagers, who had once turned to her for guidance, now seemed distant and cold. Fadzai, perplexed and heartbroken, could not understand why everything she touched now seemed to wither. The once lively and beloved sister became withdrawn, her spirit crushed under the weight of the misfortunes that plagued her. Dadirai watched from the shadows, satisfied that her plan was working, though a small part of her felt a pang of guilt, quickly silenced by the thrill of the victory. As the days passed, Fadzai's situation grew increasingly dire. The once vibrant woman, who had been the heart of the village, was now a shadow of her former self. Her beauty, once so radiant, began to fade, and dark circles appeared under her eyes. The villagers, who had once adored her, now whispered behind her back, attributing her misfortunes to a broken taboo or some hidden sin. Fadzai could feel their cold stares, their whispers gnawing at her already fragile spirit. She tried everything to break the string of bad luck that seemed to follow her. She visited the village elders, seeking their counsel and asking for any remedies that might lift the curse that had been placed on her. The elders, puzzled by her sudden turn of fortune, offered prayers and traditional medicines, but nothing seemed to help. Despair began to take root in Fadzai's heart, and she found herself withdrawing further from the world, spending long hours alone, trying to understand what she had done to deserve such a fate. Meanwhile, Dadirai watched her sister's descent with a mix of satisfaction and unease. She had achieved what she wanted. Fadzai was no longer the beloved star of the village, but instead of feeling victorious, Dadirai felt empty. The power she had gained from the charm and the satisfaction of seeing Fadzai suffer did not fill the void in her heart. It only deepened her sense of isolation. She had everything she thought she wanted, yet she was lonelier than ever. Dadirai began to realize that her jealousy had consumed her, turning her into someone she no longer recognized. But it was too late to turn back. The path she had chosen had already been set in motion, forces that were beyond her control. One night, as Fadzai lay in bed, tears streaming down her face from the weight of her sorrow, she had a dream. In her dream, she found herself in a lush green field, the air filled with the scent of flowers and the sound of birds singing. It was a place of peace, a stark contrast to the turmoil in her life. As she wandered through the field, a figure appeared before her, glowing with a soft, warm light. It was a spirit, ancient and wise, with eyes that held the knowledge of the ages. The spirit spoke to Fadzai, its voice gentle yet firm. It revealed to her the truth behind her misfortunes. The necklace she wore, the gift from her sister, was cursed. The spirit showed Fadzai a vision of Dadirai meeting with Gogo Makoni, the dark rituals they performed, and the curses woven into the necklace. Fadzai's heart shattered as she realized the depth of her sister's betrayal. The spirit told her that to break the curse, she would need to confront Dadirai and reclaim her strength. But it warned her that the path ahead would not be easy, for Dadirai's jealousy had awakened forces that would not be easily subdued. When Fadzai awoke, her mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. The pain of her sister's betrayal was deep, but so was her determination to reclaim her life. She knew that she had to act quickly before the curse drained the last of her strength. Fadzai resolved to confront Dadirai, to demand answers, and to find a way to undo the dark magic that had taken over her life. But deep down, she feared what she would find in her sister, whether there was any love left in Dadirai's heart, or if it had all been consumed by the darkness. Fadzai wasted no time in seeking out her sister. The very next morning, she made her way to Dadirai's home, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. As she approached, she could feel the weight of the cursed necklace around her neck, as if it were tightening with each step. When she arrived, she found Dadirai sitting in the courtyard, gazing into the distance with a look of cold detachment. Fadzai steeled herself, taking a deep breath before stepping forward. Dadirai, Fadzai called, her voice trembling slightly. This necklace, it's cursed. You did this to me. Why, Dadirai? Why would you do this to your own sister? Dadirai's eyes narrowed as she saw the necklace. For a moment, there was a flicker of something. Guilt, perhaps? But it was quickly replaced by a cold, defiant glare. You've always had everything, Fadzai, Dadirai spat, her voice dripping with bitterness. The love of the village, the admiration of everyone. And what did I have? Nothing but your shadow to live in. I did what I did to finally be free of it. Fadzai's heart broke at Dadirai's words, but she refused to give in to the despair. You didn't have to do this, Dadirai, she pleaded. We could have stood together, shared everything. I never wanted to overshadow you. Please, help me undo this curse. We can start over. But Dadirai shook her head, her face hardening. There's no going back, Fadzai. What's done is done. You should have stayed in your place. Fadzai felt a wave of sorrow and frustration wash over her. It was clear that Dadirai was too far gone, consumed by her jealousy and bitterness. Fadzai knew then that she could not rely on her sister's help. She would have to find another way to break the curse, and it would be a journey that would have to be taken alone. With a heavy heart, Fadzai turned and walked away, leaving Dadirai behind with her bitterness and the dark forces she had unleashed. Fadzai knew that she couldn't stay in the village. The curse was draining her strength, and without Dadirai's help, she had no way of breaking it. But more than that, she knew that as long as she stayed, Dadirai's hatred would only continue to grow, and with it, the dangers that threatened her life. She had to leave, to find a place where she could heal and perhaps discover a way to lift the curse. Under the cover of darkness, Fadzai packed a small bag with what little she could carry, some food, water, and a few personal items. She didn't dare say goodbye to anyone, not even her parents. They wouldn't understand, and she couldn't risk them trying to stop her. With a final, lingering look at the village she had called her home all her life, Fadzai slipped into the night, her heart heavy with sorrow and uncertainty. The journey was perilous. Fadzai traveled through the dense forests, across rivers and over hills, guided only by the faint hope that she might find refuge somewhere far from Dema. The spirit from her dream seemed to guide her, though its presence was faint, like a whisper in the wind. Fadzai pressed on, despite the exhaustion and fear that gnawed at her. She knew that stopping was not an option, not until she could find safety or the curse would claim her life. After days of travel, Fadzai stumbled upon a village hidden deep in the forest, a place untouched by the outside world. The villagers, though wary at first, sensed the goodness in Fadzai and took her in. They provided her with food and shelter. Fadzai was grateful, but the curse still hung over her, a dark cloud that would not go away. She knew that her time was running out, and that she would have to find a way to lift the curse before it was too late. The village that Fadzai found herself in was unlike any she had ever known. It was a place shrouded in mystery, with ancient traditions and customs that seemed to belong to another time. The villagers were kind, but there was a certain wariness in their eyes, as if they knew more than they let on. Fadzai could feel the magic that hung in the air, a subtle but powerful force that seemed to protect the village from the outside world. The village elders, a group of wise men and women who held the knowledge of their ancestors, took a special interest in Fadzai. They sensed the curse that clung to her, though they did not speak of it directly. Instead, they offered her refuge and began teaching her the ways of their people. They showed her how to harness the natural magic of the land, to use it for the healing and protection. Fadzai, eager to learn, absorbed their teachings, hoping that she might find a way to break the curse. Despite the peace of the village, Fadzai could not shake the feeling of impending doom. She knew that Dadirai would not rest until she was found. The curse was still sapping her strength, and though the villagers' remedies provided some relief, they could not lift the dark magic that bound her. Fadzai tried to stay hopeful, but each passing day felt like a countdown to an inevitable end. The villagers, though they did not say it, seemed to sense this as well. They watched her with a mixture of sympathy and concern, as if they knew that the danger she had fled from was not far behind. One day, as Fadzai was gathering herbs in the forest, she heard a faint whisper in the wind. It was the spirit from her dream, guiding her once again. The spirit warned her that time was running out, and that she would need to face the source of the curse if she hoped to survive. Fadzai knew then that she could not hide forever. She would have to confront Dadirai one last time, to either break the curse or perish in the attempt. Back in Dema, Dadirai's fury grew with each passing day. She had expected Fadzai to crumble under the weight of the curse, but instead her sister had fled. This was not the victory Dadirai had envisioned. She had wanted to see Fadzai suffer, to watch as everything she held dear was stripped away. But Fadzai had escaped, and with her the satisfaction that Dadirai craved. Dadirai's obsession with finding her sister consumed her, driving her to the brink of madness. Desperate to track Fadzai and finish what she started, Dadirai returned to Gogomakoni. The old witch, who had been keeping a close eye on Dadirai's descent into darkness, was waiting. Dadirai demanded that Gogomakoni help her find Fadzai, no matter what the cost. The witch, seeing the desperation in Dadirai's eyes, knew that this would be her final chance to dissuade the young woman from her destructive path. "Child," Gogomakoni began, her voice heavy with warning, "the path you are on will lead to your own undoing. The forces you have tampered with are not to be taken lightly. If you continue down this road, there will be no turning back." But Dadirai was beyond reason. The jealousy and hatred that had consumed her left no room for fear or caution. She insisted, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. Gogomakoni, seeing that there was no longer any hope for redemption for Dadirai, agreed to help her one last time. But this time, the spell she cast was different. It was a binding curse, one that would tie Dadirai's life force to the success of her mission. If Dadirai failed to capture Fadzai and bring her back before the next moon, the curse would turn on her, consuming her body and soul. Dadirai, blinded by her desire for revenge, accepted the terms without hesitation. As Gogomakoni performed the ritual, Dadirai could feel the dark magic seeping into her bones, filling her with a sense of power and urgency. She knew that the clock was now ticking, and that she only had a limited time to find her sister. With the spell guiding her, Dadirai set out once more, her heart filled with determination and darkness. The spell Gogomakoni had cast began to work almost immediately. Dadirai could feel a strange pull, an invisible thread guiding her towards Fadzai's location. It was as if she could sense her sister's presence, faint but unmistakable, somewhere in the distance. Dadirai moved quickly, driven by the urgency of the curse that now bound her. She knew that failure was not an option. If she didn't find Fadzai before the next full moon, the curse would claim her life. As Dadirai journeyed through the wilderness, the curse began to take its toll. Her once radiant beauty started to wither, her skin growing pale and her eyes hollow. The power she had craved was now consuming her, but Dadirai barely noticed. Her mind was fixed on one thing: finding Fadzai and finishing what she started. The villages she passed through were full of people who turned away in fear and disgust, sensing the bad energy that surrounded her. But Dadirai paid no heed, driven forward by the dark force that guided her steps. As she drew closer to Fadzai's hiding place, the pull grew stronger, so did the curse's grip on her. Dadirai's strength waned, her body growing weaker with each passing day. But the thought of seeing Fadzai getting humiliated kept her going, even as her life force slowly drained away. The forests became denser, the paths more treacherous, but Dadirai pressed on, her mind consumed by the desire to complete her mission. Meanwhile, Fadzai could feel a change in the air. The village elders had warned her that something dark was approaching, something that threatened not only her but the entire village. Fadzai knew that it was Dadirai, driven by the curse and her own hatred. She also knew that the time for hiding was over. She would have to confront her sister, to face the darkness that had taken hold of Dadirai, and find a way to break the curse before it was too late. The villagers, sensing the impending danger, began to prepare for the worst, their ancient magic ready to protect their home and the woman who had become one of their own. As the full moon approached, the tension in the village grew palpable. The elders had sensed the darkness closing in and had begun preparations to protect their people from the coming storm. They gathered in the center of the village, performing rituals to strengthen the protective barriers that had kept the village safe for generations. But they knew that this time the danger was different. It was personal, directed at Fadzai, and the forces at play were beyond anything they had faced before. Fadzai could feel the weight of the approaching confrontation. She spent her days helping the villagers prepare, learning the ancient spells and rituals that would protect them. But she knew that in the end, it would come down to her and Dadirai. The bond they had shared as sisters, now twisted by jealousy and dark magic, was something no amount of preparation could fully guard against. Fadzai felt a deep sorrow for what had become of Dadirai, but she also knew that her sister's actions could not go unchecked. The spirit that had guided her before returned in her dreams, offering advice and warnings, but the path ahead remained uncertain. Dadirai, on the other hand, was a woman possessed. The curse had taken a heavy toll on her body and mind, but she pushed forward, driven by a mixture of hatred and the desperate need to complete her mission. Her once beautiful face was now gaunt, her eyes sunken, and glowing with an unnatural light. She had become a creature of darkness, her humanity slowly slipping away as the curse tightened its grip. But even in her madness, a part of her still longed for the recognition and love she had always craved, though she would never admit it, even to herself. As the day of the full moon drew near, Dadirai finally reached the outskirts of the hidden village. She could feel the magic in the air, a powerful force that resisted her approach, but the curse pushed her forward. She knew that Fadzai was closed, and the thought of finally confronting her sister filled her with a twisted sense of satisfaction. The villagers sensed her presence as well, and the air grew thick with anticipation and fear. The stage was set for a final showdown, one that would determine the fate of both sisters and the future of the village that had given Fadzai refuge. The night of the full moon arrived, casting an eerie light over the hidden village. The villagers gathered in the central square, their faces tense, as they prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The elders led the rituals, chanting prayers and drawing protective symbols on the ground. The air was thick with the scent of burning herbs, and the energy in the village was charged with both fear and determination. Fadzai stood at the edge of the square, her heart pounding as she awaited the arrival of her sister. She knew that this night would decide everything. Dadirai, now barely recognizable as the woman she once was, approached the village with slow, deliberate steps. The curse had ravaged her body, leaving her frail and gaunt, but her eyes burned with a fierce, unholy light. The protective barriers around the village shimmered as she grew near, but they could not keep her out. Her bond with Fadzai, twisted though it was, allowed her passage. The villagers gasped as she entered the square, their eyes widening in horror at the sight of the cursed woman before them. Fadzai stepped forward, her gaze locked on her sister. The sight of Dadirai, so consumed by darkness, brought tears to her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. This was no longer the sister she had once known. This was a creature of darkness, driven by jealousy and hatred. Fadzai took a deep breath and spoke, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. Dadirai, it doesn't have to be this way. We can still end this together. Please, let go of this hatred before it destroys us both. But Dadirai only laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent shivers down the spines of those who heard it. You still think you can save me, Fadzai? It's too late for that. This is the only way it can end. One of us has to fall. The villagers watched in silence as the two sisters faced each other, the full moon casting its pale light over the scene. The air was thick with tension, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble with the energy of the impending battle. Fadzai knew that she had to act quickly. The curse was nearing its climax, and if she didn't find a way to break it, both she and Dadirai would be lost. As the first rays of moonlight touched the ground, the final confrontation began, a clash of love and hatred, of light and darkness, with the fate of the two sisters and the village hanging in the balance.